Hello, mate. How's it going? Welcome back to the Football Diary podcast. Thank you for joining us once again. And the focus this week switches to international football for a change, where we've seen an absolutely underwhelming England performance and start to their Nations League campaign for this year. And also Wales absolutely stunned the world by qualifying for the World Cup for the first time since 1958, which is probably the story of the week, I'd say. Got a few other internationals to probably talk through as well. And probably, I think, go through Project Deadwood at Manchester United and how that's going. So there's a few names cleared out since we last spoke, but I'm joined here by your boy Myles. How's it going, mate?
Yeah, how you doing, man? You good?
Decent, yeah. So Wales, first of all, what do you reckon? It is stunning to see because, I mean, it's two teams really that were cheered on for, I think, by anyone. I don't think anybody would have minded which of the two teams would have qualified. And you're almost apologetic, I think, Wales were, especially in beating Ukraine, because it was a topsy-turvy end-to-end game. A lot of chances created, a lot of lethargic performances from a few players, naturally, but Wales prevailed. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it was such an odd week in general for those playoffs because whilst the rest of the world are kind of playing Nations League fixtures that don't really mean anything, and you've got the likes of De Bruyne coming out saying that they don't actually want to play these games. In the meantime, the biggest fixtures in Wales' modern history, really. Scotland as well participated in this little run of games. And of course, for Ukraine, we saw what it meant for them as well. And it's hard, obviously, to separate the emotion from football. And obviously, world events right now meant that everyone was secretly a Ukraine fan. Wales kind of upset that party. But like you say, you have to be happy for them as well, because the journey that national team have been on over the last probably 10 years, maybe. Obviously, the loss of Gary Speed and then the development of that side. They went so far at the Euros and then qualified again. And now they've got their first World Cup. It's amazing for them too. So as much as you feel for Ukraine and you know what it would have meant for them to keep them on everyone's minds in every capacity possible, it's also a fantastic story for Wales. And there are so many individuals that we can consider, and I'm sure we will. But this game was always going to be difficult for both sides, and I think we saw that with some of the things that happened on the pitch.
Yeah, it was a strange game because it was frenetic, it was end to end, but you can kind of tell it was an end of a long season game as well, and there was still so much kind of emotion riding on it for both of them. So they were like two really tired heavyweights slugging it out, weren't they? Trying to land a killer blow, but really not having the energy to do so. But great for the neutral to watch. I found it really entertaining. I think Ukraine was so unlucky because they should have had a penalty. I definitely think they should have had a penalty. How that wasn't given even after review, I don't know. But also the deflection for Bale's goal, Yarmolenko's own goal. It was an own goal, I think, for sure. But it was still a huge slice of luck for Wales.
Yeah, the penalty decision was absolutely bizarre. I think Ukraine bought their luck in this game. They played really well. Their attacking threat was really strong, and Wales had to ride their luck sometimes and also rely on Wayne Hennessy, who had the game of his life, really. But the penalty decision, Yarmolenko will be absolutely fuming. Obviously, for his header to get deflected into his own net was one thing, but then it really felt like it was almost a redemption story for him when that moment happened. And you assume that as soon as it went to VAR that they would fix that decision, because Joe Allen just was caught completely blindsided. He had no clue that he was there. And when you see the penalty that Reece James gave away for England, for example, to me, the one against Wales for Wales is much, much clearer. There was such obvious contact. He didn't anticipate the player there. Yarmolenko did manage to get in front of him, so would have got to the ball first. It was, they'll be frustrated by that. They've had a couple of chances in the game to get a goal as well. Obviously, the early goal disallowed because the referee didn't like how quickly Zinchenko took his free kick either. So it was close. It was definitely close. But Gareth Bale stood up again in a big moment and carried Wales through when he needed to. So fair play to the guy.
It's a story for him because, I mean, he's without a club now. And he actually got quite a positive sign-off from the Madrid fans in his final sort of appearance at the Bernabeu for them. And that was nice to see. But he's got to find a club now to keep himself fit until the World Cup, which we've talked about in the past. And there's a few really left field choices of where he could go. I've heard Cardiff are interested in him, trying to find the resources. But for him, it must be retirement has got to be in his brain now. Do you know what I mean? You can see the World Cup coming. He must be thinking this is the way I finish my career. I don't think I definitely can see that happening for him.
It's so weird with Gareth Bale because I think he's still only 32.
I know.
Which is so early for us to be talking about his retirement, really, especially of a player of his quality. But it does seem like someone who's fallen out of love with club football.
Yeah.
I wonder if he makes the right move this summer, whether we might see him regain that. And Cardiff are really the only concrete name that I've seen mentioned anywhere. There's slight talk of a return to Spurs. I actually think he'd get on quite well with Conte. I think he would work for him, but I don't think that will happen. There's also talk of the MLS or Newcastle, obviously a link with everyone. But I wonder if you look at maybe Christian Eriksen and how he's got this big reputation, but gone to a slightly less pressurized environment and really shone, whether Bale might fancy the challenge of going, you know what, I will take a step back and just use it as a platform to improve my game, keep my match fitness, and get ready for the biggest tournament of my career. Because for everything he has achieved at Real Madrid, you can see what Wales means to him. And even that journey they took in the Euros when they got so far, this is the next level for him. So he will want to prolong his career in any way possible. So I can't see him playing for Cardiff. I don't think he would drop to the Championship. But I do wonder whether maybe a return to England at maybe even like Southampton, where he started out, at that sort of level where he's clearly going to be their best player, but kind of less pressure on him to be a Galactico like at Real Madrid. I don't know with him. It's such a hard situation. And actually, for what's been a really wonderful career, I'm not very keen on it as an end to it. I think it's not very dignified. That really there should be every club looking at him.
Yeah.
But for some reason, we don't see that right now.
Well, it's a question of commitment, I think, because of the way the last couple of years in Madrid have panned out, and they've painted him as somebody who would rather play golf than play football for the club. And he was paid a heck of a lot of money to sit on the bench for the last couple of years, and happily took it, it seems like. So I think the PR around him isn't the most positive. And you got to imagine that he'd be paid a huge amount less to pay for the next club he plays for, because first of all, I think he is past his best. He's not going to be anywhere near his peak anymore. But secondly, the level he's going to be at is not going to be a Champions League team, I don't think. It will be a mid-table club in one of the top 5 divisions. MLS would be a huge step down. Cardiff would be a nice story, but I don't think it'd get his fire burning. I think that's what he needs at this stage of his career, just something to go, I fell in love with club football again, like you said. Where does that take him? I have no idea, really.
And he's not the only one with that dilemma, because obviously Aaron Ramsey's in quite a similar position. Juventus have made it very clear they don't want him anymore. I don't think you can really call the spell at Rangers a success. So I can't imagine he'll remain in Scotland. So where does he go now? Because he's not going to want to just sit on the bench at Juve until the World Cup. He's going to need some match fitness too. You saw the lack of match fitness in this game from him at times. I think he looked really tired for someone who's not actually played too much. And he had that chance in the second half to pretty much seal the game for Wales. And Aaron Ramsey of old buries that 10 times out of 10. And he couldn't get his feet right. So it's really important for Wales and their success at this tournament that those two are firing, as everyone will know. That's not a groundbreaking opinion, but they obviously have to be able to develop their game somewhere. So club football is going to be a really interesting side for those two in particular.
Definitely. I hope they do find somewhere to maintain a decent level of competitiveness as well, because the World Cup is they're never going to play at World Cup again, are they? They'll be far too old in 4 years' time. So this is their moment. And I think, was it Bale or was it Robert Page was saying that this is the biggest game that's ever happened to Wales, the biggest result they've ever achieved. So the scale of it is huge. And we've seen them at Euros competing and doing really well. But we've not seen them in our lifetime at a World Cup. It's going to be fascinating to see. I just hope they give a really good account of themselves, because they're in that group now with England, the USA and Iran. And they've got a really good chance of getting out of the group, a really 100%. Good chance. Yeah,
they've got to look at that group and think that they can beat the US to second at least. And obviously, when it comes to a home nation game, anything could happen between Wales and England. It's not a guarantee that England win that game by any means. So it's a good opportunity for Wales to kick on a bit as well. And they have that extra almost spirit about them. They've got this atmosphere that the fans have developed that you don't often see with a national team. So harmonious, for example. There's always fractions at a national level because people are used to being rivals every week. But when it comes to Wales, everyone is so behind them. Scotland are similar, actually. They would have been the same, but amazing atmosphere. And I think that really carried Wales through this in what is really difficult circumstances. And worth mentioning, just the courage of those Ukraine players for what they were representing. I think Zinchenko in particular comes out with it, and a lot of credit in the British media because we're so used to him and the way he spoke so eloquently about the issues in Ukraine and how they were doing this for their country, because to get to a World Cup meant that people were noticing them, and it was more than just about football for them. And I thought their performance against Scotland was absolutely outstanding. And actually, they played really, really well in this game too. So a lot of credit, considering the fact that a lot of those players have not played competitive football for a really long time. The ones that we're slightly more used to, obviously, we've seen the Premier League, but not necessarily in the biggest roles within their club. And to be focused and concentrated in such a tough moment and to get as close as they did, they deserve every bit of credit possible, really.
Yeah. I think this was only going to be if they would have qualified, their second World Cup as well or something like that. So massive for them. But I think also it would have represented so much for them, like you say, as a nation that kind of against adversity came through it so well, and they would have richly deserved it. I do honestly think the game against Scotland took so much out of them emotionally.
Yeah, I do.
They were knackered physically as well. So I think they were definitely at a disadvantage for that massively.
Scotland will be so disappointed with themselves. We didn't really talk about that game last week, obviously, because I don't think it happened after we recorded. And Ukraine definitely deserved that win. There are a few times that Scotland went forward that you thought, on another day, they're scoring these chances. McGinn missed an absolute sitter with their header. Shea Adams probably could have scored earlier. They'll be so disappointed that they kind of went out with a bit of a whimper in the end after such an interesting qualifying campaign where they fought so hard to get to those playoffs in the first place. It's just, it's a shame for them, really, isn't it?
It's interesting because, I mean, Scotland-Wales would have been such a ding-dong battle as well. And you mentioned the spirit in both of those nations' teams. They are a bit like club sides, aren't they? And they're followed so fervently by their fans that it is almost like a club atmosphere. And that's why they are always at an advantage. Even in tournaments, they take so much support with them. But to see them playing off for a place in the World Cup in the final of the playoffs would have been awesome. I think that would have been a really good watch. But yeah, like you say, credit to Ukraine. Nice to see so much spirit being played out at this stage of a long season as well. The quality might not have been amazing, but the passion 100% was there, which was great. Somewhere where we didn't see a huge amount of passion in particular was England-Hungary. So in a strange game anyway, because there were no adult Hungarian fans in the crowd. It was a bunch of kids who weirdly booed the England players taking the knee. Whether it was them or their guardians who were with them, I don't know. But even that from the very off, it was very strange atmosphere. But for England to put in such a laboured performance as well, and for the setup that Gareth Southgate picked, it was a weird watch, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. And it's a shame because England have always taken the Nations League very seriously. And when you're trying to carry on momentum from two very successful tournaments, having these competitive fixtures actually is really handy for England. You don't have that lull and that opportunity to move away from a cycle. Instead, you continue a successful cycle. So we moved out of the Euros and straight into this tournament. And actually, we got off to the worst possible start because the timing of it doesn't help. Having it at the end of this long season is ridiculous. And Southgate used it as a chance to experiment and played the wrong side against Hungary. That's the only thing it comes down to. Playing a back five with Rice and Bellingham playing far too deep for their capabilities in a very narrow midfield, then just why are you setting up that way against a side that you should be clear favourites of when we have the attacking talent that we have? Even in the second half, when he brought James Justin off for Bukayo Saka and is still kind of playing him as like a wing back, at least that's someone that will get forward more and has a bit of an attacking edge in that position. But the fact that you're subjecting him to that sort of role, playing that formation, playing Mason Mount out of position really in the first half as well, I just feel like Southgate should know his squad better by now and should know that really, as much as you want to test people against good opponents and try out different formations, you've now got Germany and Italy in your next two games. So you have to win the Hungary games. You have to, because you don't want to be getting relegated from your Nations League group. That would be such a disappointment for England after the success they've had recently. And really, this was it was a wasted opportunity, really.
Well, it was the first defeat they've had since the final of the Euros. So try not to exaggerate too much. It's not a full-blown disaster, but it was a very winnable game. We just had to pick a team that was relatively strong. And I get you want to try new players out. And to their credit, James Justin and Jared Bowen did okay on their debuts. They did all right against difficult circumstances. But at least try the same system and slot those players in like-for-like swaps for other regulars. Do you know what I mean? And I think the fact that you said Rice and Bellingham were so deep. Harry Kane also was forced to kind of come really deep to receive the ball as well. So there's literally no attacking outlet. And that was a shame. Like you said, so much talent to call upon, yet it's just wasted.
And we're still playing a back three of Maguire, Walker on the right side as a centre-back. And look, he's done well for England in that role, but he's shown at City his capabilities as a right back and his ability to track back and cover a defence in a back four. You don't need him in that role in this kind of game. You just don't. And as much as I like Connor Cody, he was the best of the three really in this game, actually. That's not the level that you expect England to be at. And obviously they're enforced some of these decisions, but you're right. It's not a full-blown disaster. It's the first game we've lost. I understand that. But I do think when you have to be mindful of your momentum, Southgate should have been a bit smarter with this one. I don't want to question Southgate. He's done wonderfully at England. But now you've got two very difficult fixtures coming up with a lot of history, a lot of narrative around them. If you don't go and beat Germany and Italy now and you lose all three of these competitive fixtures before a World Cup, you had to just build the confidence a little bit, I would have said. I think it's easy to write these games off because they're so close to the end of the season. But actually, it's also your only opportunity before the World Cup.
That's the thing. They've shoehorned the World Cup in the end of the year, the calendar year. So
the
hand's almost been forced by playing the Nations League games, the start of this new Nations League campaign, at this stage of the end of a season. And you could just tell that I felt like it wasn't just England. There was a few teams that were just massively lethargic from the season they've had. Didn't take this first game as seriously as they could have done because they've got opportunities to redeem themselves. But as you say, England have got two very difficult challenges to try and redeem that loss. The games against Hungary were definitely the ones that you couldn't really negotiate. You had to win. Yeah. So what's he going to do now in the next game against Germany?
The other thing with that selection, and I understand that we had players injured. I understand that there are probably players with a lot of fatigue that have played more than others in this season. But when you have such a tight-knit group as Southgate does, certain things will change because it's international football. So people like Jared Bowen, who's in really good form, will come into the squad. But realistically, you should have now a cemented idea of who at least your spine is for England, who you're basing the team around. You could probably pick 8 regular starters, maybe 9, and then have a couple of players that might break their way into that team. I don't think Southgate knows who his preferred 11 is. And I think he changes it too much based on his opponent as well. If Southgate wants to play a back 5, then do you think he's comfortable with that system now? Do you think he knows who his midfield pairing is? Because this is the first time we've seen Bellingham and Rice play together in however long. I want a bit more confidence from this side because actually this is the best group of English players I think I've seen in my lifetime, and I include the 2002-2006 sort of golden age that they talked about. I think this is a better squad in many ways, and I think the biggest thing about that is the harmony that Southgate has brought to it. I don't want to see that destroyed with a poor Nations League campaign before a World Cup. I don't know. I think this was an easy win for him. They've got it wrong.
Yeah, I agree. I think the majority of the team, you can kind of pick. I think you maybe got 6 names that are on the team sheet in a regular team. So does he revert to type against Germany, do you reckon? Has he got to really? Or is he still going to be tinkering? Is their fatigue still going to be playing a part?
I honestly don't even think it's as many as 6. I think, the Kane will start. He doesn't know who his right back is still. He doesn't have a centre-back pairing because he keeps rotating that between a back 3, a back 2, players are in form, out of form. We didn't even take a left back in this squad. So you haven't got a defence. You've probably got Pickford. He relies on Pickford. Rice will start. Kane will start. Other than that, he rotates between Sterling, Foden, Grealish, Saka. when Sancho gets in the squad, he's in the conversation. Mount in the attacking areas, and then his midfield pair with Rice, he still doesn't know. So
Yeah.
when you say, does he revert to type against Germany? I don't know what type is anymore. I imagine he will play a back three again. I think he'll stick with it. If that's the case, I think you have to start Reece James. He gave the penalty away in this game, but I thought it was harsh, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
It was a bit clumsy, maybe, but I didn't think there was much in it.
I don't know. There was no protest from anyone, I don't think.
I don't know. I thought it was a bit harsh. He put his arm.
No, I mean, nobody appealed for a penalty. Everyone was kind of like, "What's the ref blowing for?" Literally,
sorry.
Wrong. At first glance, it was just a routine run of play.
Yeah, I thought it was very odd. But so I think he has to be the right wing back if you're going to play in that sort of system.
Yeah.
I don't know who the back three will be because there's still injuries and doubts, but I imagine that's what the setup will be against Germany. We'll probably have to see James Justin playing left wing back again, unless he drops Saka in there again.
I think he fancies Calvin Phillips. I really do. I think Rice and Phillips has been tried and trusted in the past, and I think at Jude Bellingham's expense, he'll probably go back to that. I would have loved to have seen Tomori play, but obviously he's still picking up an injury, hasn't he? He's not fit to play. I think Tomori is a quality player. He's had a great season. He would have been on merit so far ahead of Connor Cody, so far ahead of Harry Maguire, although I think he's kind of undroppable for Southgate now.
Yeah, maybe.
He's kind of said words to that effect.
I think the thing is you need leaders on that pitch, and Maguire obviously has been in the England camp for a very long time. And Tomori, of course, has had such a good season and been really influential at AC Milan, so could take that on. But I think he'll need a bit more time with the squad to do that. The other thing I think is if you were going to rotate that team a bit and you were going to use the Hungary game as a chance to try people out, why didn't Tammy Abraham start?
100%.
Why did you decide, no, Kane will definitely play, despite the fact that really we know that Kane gets a bit fatigued and he's had a long season as well.
Yeah.
Why don't you just try Tammy Abraham against Hungary? Because Tammy Abraham won't be guilty for dropping as deep as Kane does. He likes to be in the attacking areas. So really, you've got an outlet then. I don't know. I love Southgate. He's done no wrong thus far, but this game was a really poor showing from England. And some credit to Hungary, I guess. They took the penalty and took the chance to get themselves 1-0 ahead. They probably should have gone 2-0 up when he missed a sitter, didn't he? Absolute open goal late on.
Yeah.
But I'm really nervous about the next two England games, if I'm honest. Really
well, that's the thing. It's unwanted pressure. We didn't have to invite that kind of pressure on us, but it's there now. However, I do think it's kind of a reality check for England because we've had it quite easy for a while since the Euros finished. We've coasted, we've got through games fairly easily. I think some of us have got overexcited maybe about the prospect of getting far in the World Cup. So this is a little bit of a hang on a second. Your first 11, when it's all settled, is great. But beyond that, you guys need to sort yourselves out. And I think Southgate's got a lot of work to do for a plan B or even a plan A, you said, isn't perfect, is it? So.
And I think it undermines the Nations League as well. I know that some people are quite funny about the Nations League and don't really take it very seriously. But if England won that as a tournament, we'd be absolutely gassed in this country. Yeah. It'd be incredible. And actually, it's a good opportunity for England to pick up a silverware and get over that kind of last hurdle. They obviously got to a semi-final, then a final, but they've still not picked up any silverware. And what a thing to carry into the World Cup that would have been, to just continue to push forward in this competition as well. It's a bit, I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to say too much about it, but
no. A couple of other quite outstanding results in the international games that came through. France lost to Denmark at home 2-1, which was interesting. Belgium got absolutely hammered by Netherlands 4-1. Netherlands look really strong as well. Louis van Gaal's army is coming good. So I don't know what happened.
In the voice, surely.
No, I'm not even going to attempt that, mate.
I loved it when he did that.
Murder his Dutch accent. But no, Belgium as well. Their golden generation is looking a bit faded now, isn't it?
Oh, they definitely, because they haven't really got a defence. But also, when you've got De Bruyne coming out going, we don't want to play these games, and then you play your biggest rivals in international football, and that's still your attitude towards it, doesn't really look very good, does it, for Bobby Martinez? I thought it was shocking.
No, his time's surely up anytime soon, isn't it? But it's that disrespect of the Nations League you're talking about. This first wave of fixtures at the end of the season, has been kind of rightly dismissed in some ways. I think I'd feel the same. I'd struggle to get myself motivated for the first Nations League game of the campaign, knowing you can redeem yourself soon enough, you know.
If you're France or Germany or someone that's been a serial winner in international football, totally agree. If you're Belgium, who have failed to win a tournament yet and really look like they're kind of letting this golden generation pass by, again, take a Nations League at this rate. Just take that. That would do for you, because I don't know. Yeah, that was another one. That was disappointing. Italy, Argentina was shocking.
Yeah.
It's not been the best international break so far.
No, the quality's been end of season quality, hasn't it, really?
Yeah.
On that note as well, Italy and Germany drew 1-0 in the other Nations League game in our group.
Yeah.
And Italy played a very inexperienced team. So obviously there's a generational change there. They did okay. I think Germany played a pretty strong side as well. So to get a draw from that must give them some confidence to see through this weird period where they're not playing in the World Cup, surely.
Yeah, definitely. They've got time to kind of rebuild now, because there's probably a need for that after the Euros. Obviously, you've got quite a few players moving on: Jorginho, Insigne, Chiellini. There'll be a lot of change needed in that Italy side. I loved seeing Pellegrini come in as well and score. It's amazing to see him in the number 10 shirt for Italy. I think he deserves that after the season he's just had. So a refresh is needed there. Germany have got some really good young players too that are breaking through. That Adeyemi that's just signed for Dortmund looks really good. Musiala, obviously England missed out on him, but he looks
and
great.
Just say as well, what a signing that is for a replacement for Haaland as well. Adeyemi, another typical Dortmund signing, and I think they announced it within like 24 hours of Haaland going. So fair play to Dortmund.
Yeah, they've smashed that one, and then obviously Wirtz as well when he comes back. So Germany and Italy are both in this really interesting period where they've had this success, and now they're looking at building the next steps. What I thought was really interesting was watching Italy do it with some very young players and some very old players on the pitch at the same time, and trying to slowly transition it. I think it's a bit like that Real Madrid team that we talked about in the Champions League. They're starting to embed it, and that's what Italy need right now more than anything.
Still think Mancini is the right man for it as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think if anyone's going to be able to suss that problem out and get them through that cycle, it will be him. He had such a good start to his time at Italy, and now he does have to deal with a lot of change. He does have to try and locate a number 9 from somewhere and kind of replace some of the old guard. But I think he'll do well for him eventually.
And finally, as well, just a quick return to club football. Manchester United, we haven't talked about yet, but they have seen a lot of players leave this last week. Players that we're not surprised to see leave, really. So Nemanja Matic, Juan Mata, obviously Paul Pogba, Jesse Lingard. I mean, Lingard and Pogba, we knew that their time was kind of up. Matic, we knew he was probably past his best. And Juan Mata as well, I think, was probably the one that's been received with the most kind of sadness by United fans. But generally, I think that approach has been quite well received by them, me included. I was quite nice to see the announcements with very little kind of emotion attached to them as well. So they were saying goodbye and thank you to Paul Pogba, goodbye and thank you to Jesse Lingard, with a bit of a montage of his time at United, because he's been there since he was a kid. So there's respect there. But the highlights really for the likes of Pogba was so sparse after his 6 years at the club. Kind of indicates the kind of time he's had there, doesn't it? Really, it wasn't the most glowing.
I'm really interested to see the next steps for Pogba in particular. It looks like it'll probably be back to Juventus, which is such an odd career, isn't it? United to Juve to United to Juve. It's odd, but I think he could add something to that Juventus midfield. They obviously have had issues there over the last few years where they've struggled to replace Pogba, really. Obviously, they brought in Arthur and that didn't quite work out. Weston McKennie showed some promise. Pjanic was in and out. That didn't really work out in the way that they wanted to. Ramsey's not worked out. Rabiot's not necessarily the player that you want. Locatelli's come in. So Pogba will fill a gap there, definitely. But sad to... as an outsider, I was quite sad about it because Pogba has so much ability. Absolutely incredible player. I love watching Paul Pogba when he's on his A game. And we saw that at United in glimpses. Under Mourinho, you saw it at times. Under Solskjaer, when Solskjaer first came in particular, he was outstanding. He was United's best player for the first sort of few months of Solskjaer's reign. And I just wanted to see that player at a consistent level because it would have been a gift to the Premier League. And it's never really hit the height that we wanted it to. I don't know where United replace him, though. I think the replacement will probably be Van der Beek. I can't imagine them bringing someone in of the kind of profile that they want to. There's obviously all this talk of Frankie de Jong. It's ridiculous talk. It's absolutely nuts. As broke as Barcelona are right now, he could sign for United next week and I'll look like a fool. But Barcelona really don't want to lose him. They might have to cash in on some players, but I cannot imagine them cashing in on a player that they view as such an asset. No. Xavi has said countless times how much he loves De Jong and doesn't want to see him go. De Jong has said himself, I don't want to leave Barcelona. I want to play Champions League football. And then the next thing you read is Man United have put a bid in for Frankie de Jong. Hopefully that's just his agent and that's not happening.
I think so. I like to think that United have turned a corner in that respect and aren't generating speculation or leaking who their targets are. I think it is literally generated by the agent and probably by Barcelona as well. Who knows?
There's a few players that I've seen United linked with that if they could pull off would be absolutely astounding. Darwin Núñez at Benfica is a fantastic player, and if United are looking to bring in a new face up front, that would be the best option on the market for them right now after not really being in the conversation for Haaland. That would be incredible. Frankie de Jong would be perfect in some ways, even if it's not the holding midfielder that Man United have necessarily been looking for. They need to add some depth with the amount of players that are leaving. I just don't really know where that comes from. Maybe they'll look to promote some youth. Who knows?
I think it'd be a mix, and I think that's the way Ten Hag operates. I don't think he goes for blockbuster names either, which is why I don't think De Jong is really the profile he's looking for. He's probably looking towards more like the Dortmund way of working now. Someone like Adeyemi, buying him at a good price and seeing how good he gets, but without selling him, rather than doing that, just keep him and make him a world-class player that way.
If the De Jong interest is genuine, then obviously that's a bit of an outlier for the idea of a marquee signing, just because he's worked with Ten Hag so closely before that although he is now a world star, he is almost still that under-the-radar signing because it's that connection that they've got. So I would understand that. It looks like Timber's coming over from Ajax as well, centre-back, which I think is really interesting because I haven't seen anyone leaving yet. Maybe Eric Bailly will move on, and that'll be the squad replacement. There's talk that they're listening to offers for Aaron Wan-Bissaka as well. There's players like Pereira still coming back that you've got to deal with as well. There's a lot of players United could get rid of. Yeah. But just to say, Matic to Jose Mourinho's Roma is the most hilarious signing of the window because it's just so obvious. Mourinho came out yesterday, I think it was like, Matic is someone I really trust. Like, yes, we know. You're getting the back. It's fine.
Yeah, I think for United going forward as well, it's more a case of identifying targets like Timber would be a good one, just somebody who has a profile that's up and coming, like they've done with Ten Hag in some ways. I just think the kind of wages they're going to release by players like Pogba leaving will give them a decent amount of money to play with as well, to get maybe 2 or 3 players to cover him. I hope they can do their business quite quickly in the transfer market as well, but we'll see. They'll be linked to a million names before the season's out, the summer's out.
There's so much uncertainty around a lot of players right now. Like we didn't even mention Martial coming back from his loan spell. Essentially, you still need to replace Greenwood in a footballing capacity as well. The midfield, you've now kind of got to decide whether Fred and McTominay will stay around and be your midfield too, if you are looking at more advanced players. Maguire, maybe you consider whether you could shift him on. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think you might end up being a bit stuck with him.
I think it's going to be waves, isn't it? Transfer window after transfer window, a little bit gets chipped away at. I think he's going to have to coach some of the players that he's got to be better. And I think he probably will with a few. I think the ones with the wrong attitude we'll see leave. And that's the biggest change in culture we'll see at United. Fingers crossed anyway, from the fans' perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And to be honest, United aren't the only club in the Premier League that look like they could need a big rebuild this summer. So it's going to be a competitive market. Obviously, Newcastle's money brings them into a lot of conversations. Chelsea's new money might bring them in. Liverpool look like they're losing Mane. Like it looks pretty set now. I think Bayern's first bid got turned down today. They've had 25 million plus add-ons of like 2 million. which is very, very low. I mean, he's approaching 30 and he's got a year left on his deal and he's made it known that he wants to leave. So that's always going to lower someone's fee. But Liverpool, they can't let themselves be mugs.
They won't do that.
Is having Mane in your team for another year and just letting him go on a free worth more than 25 million to Liverpool? Probably in today's market. So I think he'll go. But it'd be interesting to see how long that draws out, whether Liverpool will dip into a market as well. All of a sudden, United could have competition for players. It's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, definitely. That all to talk about next week. And also Nations League. England will have played both Germany and Italy by that point. So hopefully you'll join me then. We'll have Dave back then as well. He's, in case you didn't know, just got engaged. So...
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Big news, yeah. So he's been away this weekend and popped the questions. So yeah, congratulations, Dave, from us guys.
I'm going to go phone him right now.
You should. But yeah, until then, mate, join me next week and we'll go through all of that. But yeah, appreciate you watching. Appreciate you joining me. And yeah, see you soon.
See you later, guys.
Cheers, man.